Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be building the full Tang Hunter knife kit using a brand new product that we've developed here at Knife Kits called Damagrip Liner Layer. It's in field brown and the liner layer is in black. So follow along as we build the full Tang Hunter knife kit.
All right, first thing we're going to do here is open up this very nice gift box that this kit comes in. We're going to take it out. As you can see, we have a blade, and we have a guard, and we have a pin. That's what comes with the kit. And then of course, any pin stock that you want, whether you want to use steel or brass or mosaic pin or anything like that, you'll get separately. So we're just going to fit our guard on here. Just make sure it sits the way that we want it. You will have a tiny gap. It's not going to be perfectly flush, and that's just because obviously the two pieces of metal have to be able to slide together. Later, should you decide to really fill that in, you can use a little JB weld and then polish it all out and make it look like it's all one piece. So we want to make sure that our pin goes in, that the hole's lined up. Now we got that. Let's go ahead and tape our blade. Now we're taping it so that we can, one, protect the blade from scratches as we're working, but two, to help us not cut ourselves because these blades are sharp. And you don't have to worry about the tape being smooth or anything because again, this tape is on there strictly to protect us from cutting our hands. Now we're going to come over to our anvil here, which in this case is on our vise. If you have a separate anvil, that's fine. I do recommend though that you work on a vise or anvil like this when you're peening your pins. And you don't have to hammer them hard. We are showing this a little bit faster than what you're normally going to do it, but what you're trying to do is spread the pin out on the inside and then it will mushroom slightly on the top. This is a slightly softer steel. It's made to do that. So as you peen it, it will expand on the inside, it'll mushroom on the outside, so you don't want to just pound it and end up bending it. And you want to get it down as smooth as you can on both sides. And then of course, when we get to our grinder later, we'll go ahead and smooth it on out and polish it out so that you don't see the pin. So it's important to know that that pin does come the right length. You are going to peen down that much of it. Don't trim part of the pin off before you start peening, because what will happen is you won't get that expansion and eventually that pin can back out. Now we're going to go over and we are going to mark out our handle scales here from our Damagrip. Make sure in this case on this Damagrip, because the liner layer is black, make sure that the black is facing the tang. So just whatever color you choose on your Damagrip liner layer, just make sure that your liner is the one that is facing the handle when you mark it. Otherwise you glue it on backwards and then you got a problem. So what we're doing here is marking our handles so that we can cut them out. Got to remember which side you're doing each one on as well. That does make a difference, obviously. Now you may wonder here why he's got the wrong side facing the tang. This is just a matter of preference of the way that you're working it. He probably realized after the first one that it's a little bit difficult to see on the black, so here's an option. He's marking the brown side because it's easier to see, but if you'll notice, he's got it on the same side of the tang as he did when he marked the black. So because he's marking the opposite side, it's the same as marking the black side on the other side of the tang. I know that's a little confusing, but you'll see what I mean when we are done. So now he's just going to his grinder here, and he's going to mark down close to that line. You're not going to take it all the way to the line. You want to leave yourself a little bit, just in case you marked wrong or your blade moved a little bit, because what we'll do is go back and finish it later. You can see, although we're working at 2.5 speed, even at regular speed, if you push into this coarse grit sandpaper on the sander grinder, you're going to take this Damagrip down pretty quick. So watch as you're doing it. Don't turn your head away or you'll take off too much. Just take your time. Make sure you get it the way that you want it. And just get it close to the lines that you drew, not all the way to the line. And then when we're done, it's very important to wipe down your Damagrip completely, both sides, because that way when you get ready to epoxy it on, the side that's being epoxied, of course, needs to be clean so that it sticks to the tang, and then the other side's clean, which just means your hands are cleaner when you're working with it. You don't get everything all over it. So take you a damp rag and wipe them down real good before you get ready to epoxy them on. So now we're just going to check our fit here. Make sure that we've got some meat hanging over everywhere so that we don't end up with metal sticking out somewhere. And then we are going to tape our handle on. This will be one scale, and then we'll come back and do the other one. We're just going to do this one at a time so that we can go and drill the holes into our handle scale. And again, this is where it's important. Make sure that it is butted up completely against that guard, and that you have some handle material hanging over on all sides. Because you can see it's a pretty tight fit. And if we don't have that straight, then you're going to end up with part of your tang that will be sticking out of the handle material. Alright, so now we're going to clamp it to a block of wood here. We've marked where our hole's going to be in that tape, kind of cut a hole in it so that we can get to the right hole in the tang. And then we are just going to drill our hole for our pin. And if you want to be sure that it really doesn't shift, go ahead and put that pin in. Because that way your front hole is lined up between your tang and your handle material. And then you got your clamp on the back that was holding it initially. Now you got the pin in there. So that lines up your front. Just go back and double check, make sure that none of that, again, remember the handle material on this one's a little bit tight. So you want to go back and make sure that it's exactly where you want it. And so by having that pin in and then clamping, we now basically have two spots on the handle material where it's held tight, so we shouldn't have any further problems with it shifting. So now we're going to drill the hole for our second pin. And if you want at this point, you could even put the other pin in. And then that way you've got two pins, you know it's not shifting. Better safe than sorry, right? Now we're still going to have the clamp holding it on, just that way everything doesn't bounce around. And then last, we're going to drill the hole for our thong hole tubing. Now, if you don't like thong hole tubing, you don't have to drill this last hole. You can just cover it up with your handle material and it will not be an issue at all. All right, so we're all set here. And then we just need to repeat this for the other side. Of course, be sure that you put the right side down, that you got it on the right side of the tang. You don't want to drill your holes wrong.
In today's project, we're using a brand new material developed by Knife Kits completely in-house called Damagrip Liner Layer. Now, you may have seen custom knives in the past that appear to have something in between the tang and the handle. It's just a thin layer that's a different color. Traditionally, it's red or it's black. And that is there for multiple reasons. One, of course, for looks. Two, it's to help any imperfections in the tang. Maybe the handle material is a stiffer material and you can't get that completely butted up against the tang perfectly smooth. So that layer, traditionally vulcanized fiber, would allow you to cover up those imperfections, as it were, right? Well, the issue is one, this vulcanized fiber is essentially paper. So over time, if it gets wet, it can cause issues. In addition, it is extremely limited in color availability. Well, we developed Damagrip Liner Layer to overcome that, because now you can get many different colors of Damagrip with this liner permanently attached to it in multiple different colors. So not only is it easier to work with than the vulcanized fiber, it also saves you time because you're only epoxying on one side now instead of on both. So what this allows you to do is take your choice of Damagrip with the liner layer already attached to it when you get it. You simply epoxy it right to the tang of your knife, and it gives you a beautiful finish, as you're going to see at the end of the video today. So if you'd like to pick up some Damagrip Liner Layer, just click right here and head on over to Knife Kits.
And then we're just going to clean it up, and we're going to roughen it a little bit. And the reason that we're roughening it is just so that the epoxy can stick a little bit better to it. If you've got a super smooth surface, it doesn't really have anywhere for the epoxy to grab. So we have a lot of different types of epoxy over at knifekits.com, but today we're using JB Weld. It's all a matter of your preference. All of the epoxies that we sell are great. It just depends on which one your preference is. So now we've roughed up the tang a little bit. Keep your work surface as clean as you can, just makes everything easier to deal with. You want to make sure that you got everything exactly like you want it before you start mixing your epoxy. Because once it's mixed, you got to move pretty quick. And in this case, we're just going to mix equal amounts of our JB Weld. We're going to mix it together really well. And understand, you don't have to be exact here. You want to be as close to the same with both here, but as you can see, we're not using a measuring cup or measuring spoon. We're just roughly eyeballing it. If it's off by a tiny bit, it's still going to set. It's not going to be a problem. But you don't want double of one than you do the other as far as our two-part epoxy here. So, and then just blend it till it's gray. You don't want to see the black and white. Now, that's one of the kind of nice things about JB Weld is with the two different colors, you can definitely tell when you got it mixed good. You should just have that gray color. And we're going to go ahead and put it again. Make sure that it is going on the liner side, which in this case it's easy to tell because it's black. So make sure that you put it on the black side or the liner side of your Damagrip. Then you want a pretty good layer. It doesn't have to be super thick because when you squeeze it together on the tang, it's going to squeeze out any excess. So if you just put it on there a good smooth layer, then you don't get as much that you got to worry about cleaning up later. But you want to make sure and cover the complete surface. complete surface includes the top where it's going to meet that guard. And it's up to you whether you want to put the epoxy on the handle scale right there or whether you want to put it on the guard. Since we're already putting epoxy on the scale, might as well do the whole scale. At this point, time is of the essence. Although you've got a little bit of time for the JB Weld to cure, it starts curing once you've mixed it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that before it's done curing, we've got time to get it onto our other scale, the scale attached to the tang, and the pins through both scales and the tang. And again, just make sure that you are thoroughly covering the scale. When you're done here, you don't want to see any of the scale. You only want to see the gray. Going to tap our handle pins in. In this case, as you can see, we're using brass handle pins on a stainless guard knife, but then we're using stainless thong hole tubing, so it gives just a nice little offset of color there. And as you're doing this, just kind of adjust your handle scales on both sides to make sure that it's going through. It should be fairly smooth. It's going to be a little bit sticky as you're hitting your pins through just because there's epoxy in there. But as you're tapping, don't hit real hard as you're tapping. If you feel it hitting a solid surface, that means your pin, depending on where it's at, is either hitting the tang or it's hitting the scale on the other side. So you want to make some adjustments before you knock it on through. You don't want to damage your handle scale or cause your pins to swell before you're ready to actually peen them. When you're clamping it down, you just want to get the clamps nice and snug. You're not going to break Damagrip or anything like that. It's not like a natural wood that's going to break if you over tighten it. But what it will do is it can put a dimple into your Damagrip. So all right, what we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and peen these pins. We took that one clamp off so that we can go ahead and peen them. The reason is you want to peen these before your epoxy cures. And the reason for that is, remember, as I explained, when you put your two handle scales on, what winds up happening, remember, is you squeeze out some of that excess epoxy. And when you squeeze it out, it's also squeezing into the holes inside there. And so if you let that completely cure, what's going to happen is, or can happen anyway, is when you go to peen the brass pin, you can actually crack that epoxy in there because it will have already hardened. And again, we've sped this up. So when you're doing this, you're obviously not going to be hitting this fast. This is also a thing where you're not smacking it. You can see this is a pretty small hammer. And this is brass, so it's even softer than the steel is. So you just want to get it down so that it's fairly close and smooth. And then we're going to grind that out so that it's perfectly smooth when we're all done. Now what we're doing here is we're mixing a little bit of DevCon 2-ton epoxy. What you kind of didn't see off the screen there is, if you notice, there's a file on the top right here. What he did is he went in where his thong hole tubing is, and he just cleaned out the excess epoxy with the file. The reason for that is because thong hole tubing, you're not going to peen. So, because you don't want it to roll over on the inside, you want that thong hole tubing to look nice and smooth. There are some more advanced techniques that we'll show you in a later video on how to deal with thong hole tubing, where you can flare it. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to get some epoxy on our thong hole tubing, and when we put it in that epoxy will hold it in place, as opposed to peening along with the epoxy. All right, now we're going to go to our sander grinder here. This is a very dangerous tool to work with. You want to make sure that you have a good grip on your blade, because remember, you're not really squeezing the handle because you're working that to sand it down. So you want a good grip on that blade so that it doesn't sling your knife across the room or into you. Of course, we'll start with a fairly coarse belt, and then we'll work our way to finer and finer sanding belts. And what we're doing is we're just grinding down and smoothing so that we get our handle scales smooth to the tang of the knife. We get a nice curvature where it comes up to the finger guard. And of course, we're smoothing down that pin stock as well as the thong hole tubing. Again, remember, they're a little bit softer, so you can do that when you're sanding it down. And just get it where it feels smooth. You run your finger across it, and what's going to happen is you'll feel if it's got a little dip or anything in there where the handle material is not quite far enough. And then at this point, you can also shape it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our polishing wheel here. And this is even more dangerous than our sander was. Because this thing will grab the knife slap out of your hand and throw it a country mile. So make sure that you got a good tight grip on it. And we're just going to polish out. We're kind of checking for any imperfections. If you find that you don't have the exact shape that you want, or everything's not as smooth as you want, then you'll just go back to your sander grinder and take a little bit more off. But if all is well, you'll just polish it to your liking here. And Damagrip really polishes up nice, so it's this is going to turn out really great for us. And the idea is, on your finger guard, if you ground it right, sanded it, and you polish it perfectly, you will not even see where you put that pin in.
Man, that full Tang Hunter turned out absolutely beautiful, and it's functional as well. We appreciate you following along with us as we built the full Tang Hunter today. Now, if you liked the video, please take the time to click like, and of course leave any comments, suggestions, anything like that. Also, if you want to build the full Tang Hunter for yourself, simply click the link right here and it will take you directly to Knife Kits to get everything that you need to do it. Also, if you take the time to click subscribe and the little notification bell, our very next video is going to be building a sheath for this kit. So that way you can build the kit, you can make a sheath so that you can carry it around. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope to see you soon.